we're going to build a customer service WhatsApp bot with Node.js today. And what we're going to do specifically is we're going to work on, of course, opting in and out, because it's really important when you're dealing with anything like WhatsApp that's going to not be in a little website where you can ignore it when you need to. And we want to be able to programmatically generate and respond to the messages that we're going to be getting from our end user. And at the end of the workshop, then hopefully you will be able to put together your own bot for whatever purpose, whatever purposes you need. In this workshop, the examples we're going to work through are listing an item, subscribing to tags, getting notifications, purchasing an item, and then notifying the sellers that they've sold something that they need to ship it. But those examples will just be examples to allow us to work through a little bit of code and some theory about designing these kinds of bots. So hopefully everybody is already coming in with Node installed. You need an editor. In this example, I'm going to be using Glitch. I'm going to be working here on Glitch, and you can work on Glitch too if you want. I'll give you the URL in just a second. You're also going to need a Vonage developer account, and you're going to need WhatsApp installed if you want to be able to test this out as we're going along. If you need credit for this example or for anything else, here's the code. It's 21UNLX7696, and that's going to give you 10 euros worth of credit so that you can do some testing using our APIs. Okay, so let's talk about the goals for this. We're gonna work through this example, but we're not gonna work through all of it. There will be code that's available on Glitch that you can look at that we're not going to go into detail about. So there will be more. This is sort of the tip of the iceberg, but this will give us something useful to talk about. So why, first of all, why are we going to even use a WhatsApp bot instead of any of the other ways that we might interact with people? It's a lot lighter weight than a website, and that's true of any kind of chat bot or an SMS bot, a WhatsApp bot, or Facebook Messenger, whatever tool we're using. If we're just messaging back and forth, that's a lot lighter weight than a website, which can be important for people when they're not sitting at their desk. And another really valuable feature of any bot is that it supports asynchronous interaction. So you don't have to sit there, use the website, work through it, which, I mean, obviously you can get up and leave the website, but with a bot, you can do the same thing. It's a little bit, it's a little bit more accessible than something like, for instance, if you're on your phone, you're having an asynchronous conversation with a bot in WhatsApp, you can go away from it at any time, come back to it at any time. You don't have to worry about having a session. Whereas if you have a tab open in your browser on your phone, your phone's going to want to refresh that. When you come back to it, you can actually lose your place. So the most important thing is that a bot like this will allow users to lose connectivity and then just resume interacting with the service like nothing ever happened. And this conversation model also allows for us to push useful information out to the consumer. So we can give updates that the user has requested the same way that a real person would send you information via WhatsApp. But unlike a real person, the bot is always going to be available. So if you want to start doing whatever task you need to do at 3 a.m. in the morning, that's perfectly fine for the bot. So to create your project, like I said, I've created mine on Glitch. So if you want to use Glitch, you're welcome to. The URL is vonage-whatsapp-bot.glitch.me. And so if you go to that URL, then you will see this UI here. And you can pull down this little menu here, and if you click Remix on Glitch, then that is going to allow you to get all of my code here. And there's not a lot to this project. It's pretty straightforward. Most of it is here in server.js, and then there's obviously package.json, which is going to give you all of the packages that you need to set this up. We're not going to be using a ton of stuff. We're going to be using the Vonage Node Server SDK, Express, SQLite, and there's some things actually that we don't even need. So really all we need is the Vonage API, Express, SQLite, and that's it. But the important thing here is that that the scripts are specific to Glitch, and so this start script is what allows it to run on Glitch. Other than that, this is nothing. We don't even need this stuff. I should have cleaned this up a little bit more. There's also an index.html file in here that is just hosting a single form, and that will just take a phone number and basically allow someone to opt into our service. So you can remix the code if you want to just get a copy of that, or you can just use what's on Glitch to check yourself as you're going through it, whatever is the way that you prefer to code. But you do need to have a publicly accessible URL in order to receive WhatsApp messages, because we're going to be making use of webhooks. That's the way that we get the messages from our users. We need to have a publicly accessible URL somewhere. So you can either use the Glitch URL that you get when you remix it, or you can use a tunnel that you create on your local machine. Up to you. And let me pause right there. Does anybody have any questions about that bit of setup? If you're not familiar, particularly if you don't want to use Glitch, but you don't know how to create a tunnel, can you raise your hand or shout out or something? Okay, looks good. All right, let's go. So setting up the Messages API sandbox is the next step. So for this, you're going to need to go to the Vonage developer dashboard, and that's at dashboard.nexmo.com. And you can find the sandbox under the Messages and Dispatch menu on the left-hand side. You want to greenlight your device to interact with the sandbox by using the QR code. You can just take your phone, point it at the screen, and use the QR code to walk your device through the steps that you need. And then you want to also add webhook endpoints. So what that's going to look like is you've got this green box here. Just out of view is a QR code that you can just scan, and then down below you have two webhooks, inbound and status. Status we don't really deal with, but it's good practice to implement it, or not to implement it, but to at least put a placeholder there for it in case you want to take this and build a production application with it. So then you would want to observe those statuses. Inbound is the important one. So the one that the URL that I've provided it is the URL of my app on Glitch /inbound, and that is where all the messages that our user sends to us, to our application, are going to arrive. Let's see. And so it looks like we had one question about a tunnel. There's a product called ngrok that you can download if you want, and ngrok will allow you to create a tunnel to your local installation. Amanda's got the link. Thank you, Amanda. So you can use that in lieu of the webhooks, and that will also provide you a URL. It'll give you I can't remember what the URLs look like off the top of my head. Sorry, I'm trying to think of it, but I can't remember what they look like. But ngrok will give you a URL, which is an alias for whatever your local installation is for localhost 8080 or 3000 in this case, and that will be available to the outside world, and it will be available to these webhooks. So whichever way you want to do it, you should be able to get something going fairly easily. Okay. So now that we have a little bit of setup done, the next step will be to create an application. And you can do that in the Vonage developer dashboard too. I'm talking about creating an application in Vonage terms. So within the Vonage developer dashboard, you can see that there's right at the top, there's your applications right under your username. And so you want to go there, click the create application button, and then you want to make sure that you generate and download a private key. And that private key, if you want to save it somewhere immediately, you can save it into a new file in your Glitch project under .data/private.key, or you can put it wherever you want to, just as long as you know how to refer to it from within your code. And we'll highlight that when we're going through it. You want to turn on the messages capabilities, just toggle the toggle there. And you want to, again, set your webhook endpoints. You can use the same webhook endpoints you used in the messages sandbox. It won't cause a problem because it's going to be the same application. And then you want to make sure you save your application ID. This is going to need to go in .env along with your Vonage API key and your API secret, as well as I think we also have the WhatsApp number, the sandbox WhatsApp number, or if you had promoted this to a business WhatsApp account, your business WhatsApp number will go in .env as well. And that looks like this. So here's the create application page. You want to make sure that you come here again, generate public and private key, and that will give you a that will show you a public key, and it will offer you a download of a private key. And down here at the bottom, messages, you want to make sure that you click that on, set your endpoints here. So that will get you all ready to party with the messages API in Vonage. The application, the test application we're going to be creating is called Nice Cool Shoes. You can tell that I'm really good at titles. And this is just going to be a consignment store that allows people to sell their used shoes and allows other people to buy them. It's not going to be terribly sophisticated. Basically, people will subscribe to a tag or hashtag if somebody uploads or somebody lists a pair of shoes using that hashtag, then all the subscribers will receive a notification. They can then choose to buy it. Whoever's fastest wins, gets to buy the shoes, and the seller is notified, and we move on happily. And that's basically the functionality of it, and that will serve to walk us through a few examples of different interactions that we might have as a customer service WhatsApp bot with our end user. The first step is going to be sign up. Oh, actually, let's hold up. Okay, let's make sure that everybody got to this point first. Is everybody good to go with a project setup and a place to code? Or are there any questions about getting Vonage API set up or glitch setup or anything like that? And if you're using the glitch code, let me know if you have encountered questions about anything within there too that's confusing you. Because from here we'll go in and we'll start talking about the code in specific. Okay, all right. So let's actually, as we start talking about this, let's first go and look at our project setup in the code here, because I kind of glossed over .env and a few other things. So let's go look at the very top of server.js in this code here. We're requiring a bunch of stuff here. I think I can't remember that we're actually using this. I don't think we're uploading this, but just in case, I'm going to leave it here. I'm one of those people who always never starts a project from scratch, so I apologize. That's a little bit messy. So we're going to come here and we're going to use Express. We're going to make sure that we can access the JSON. We're going to serve some static pages, and then we're going to come down here and set up our SQLite database. And so this database file is going to live at .data/SQLite.db. And so if you run into any problems, any corrupt data, all you need to do is go into your terminal and remove that file, and then you'll be able to regenerate the whole thing. So if you remove .data / SQLite DB, oops, where's it gone? If I typed wrong. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that because it's not working the way I expect it to. So I wouldn't want to actually remove something that, oh, I don't think I've created it again. I think I need to actually refresh this. I think I just did remove it. Let's check. Okay, yeah, so I've got nothing in my .data directory right now, except for my private key. So private.key I've saved in .data, and that will come up in a minute. So again, if you're using Glitch, you might want to save it in the same place. .data is a folder that does not get copied over to a remix. It's private just to you and the editors of your specific instance of this application. So you can feel secure putting your private key in there, as well as data that may contain things that you don't want to share. Anyway, so we've got nothing. We don't have a SQLite DB file in .data right now, so that means I need to refresh this to get the database creation script to run. So I'm going to do that. It's restarted. Now let's try looking in there again. Ah, voila, there it is. Okay. Sorry for the confusion there. So now we have a SQLite DB file there. So exists is going to come up true. Before it would have come up false. We're going to create our database and then set some states. We'll come back to what these are specifically, but this is for now just a way of easily referencing what the different states are so that they're human readable and they're not just codes. And then finally, this is what I was just mentioning. So in here, if there is no database file in existence already, we're going to make some tables, and this is where we're going to set up all the stuff that we're storing. So we're storing information about the state. We're going to store information about our users. We're going to store tag subscriptions. We're going to store listings, and we're going to store orders. Again, like I said, this is a very simple example, so we don't have a whole lot of the information you would expect to see in here. There's these are very lightweight tables, and there's not very many of them. So now we're going to make sure that we can serve our index file, which is again this over here. Not terribly complicated, just a little field for entering the number and a button to submit it. Here's the status endpoint. Like I said, this is really just a placeholder. All I'm going to do is return a response to acknowledge any status information that comes in, and that's it. But I can do a lot more with this, and in a real-world application, I would probably want to. Then we're going to get our Vonage object, and we're going to create that with an API key, API secret, application ID, and a private key. So these are all coming from .env. So in .env, I have variables called API key, API secret, app ID. If you remix this on Glitch, you'll already have a template that holds spaces for those. And then I have private key as well, and that's going to be a path. I'm using path just because you can get into some weird situations when you try to provide your private key via the .env file itself. So I'm just going to use a path to make sure it works out. And that's again where we just looked at it in .data private.key. And importantly, I'm going to, in the options object here, I'm going to set the API host to use the messages sandbox. The messages sandbox is a way for you to use Vonage's APIs for WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Viber, things like that, and test them out without having to have proper business accounts on those set up already, because that's a lot of overhead for you to go through just to try out the code. So this is a way for you to test those things out using Vonage's APIs and see if the code is going to work for you. Okay, now we get down into the actual code here. So let's go check for questions first. I see that Clarice does have a nice collection of shoes. Very stylish, something for every occasion. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to sign our users up. And the users are just going to pop their number into that web interface, and then a bot is going to walk them through registration. And so they're going to do it in 3 steps. They're going to first submit a username, then an email address, then a mailing address. And that is a really interesting way, I think, to talk about statefulness. Because if we were a web application, the state of the application with regard to the user who's interacting with it would be maintained in the user's session. But when we're talking about a bot, a WhatsApp bot, an SMS bot, any type of messaging bot, we don't have that. There's no session that's created. There isn't that sort of handshake. I mean, it's not really a handshake. It's a cookie, and I think we're all aware that it's just a cookie that lives in the browser and it lives on the server. But that cookie is not there. You don't send somebody a cookie. You send them a piece of text, and they send you a piece of text. So when you get a WhatsApp message via the webhook, you get absolutely no state. I mean, the webhook doesn't even really care like who it came from at that point. Like who it came from is a property within the webhook. It's not a specific user that you're connecting with. And this is sort of the same way the web works, but for such a long time we've had web servers that handle that. It seems a lot different. But what we can do to get around that is we can do basically some of what a web server is doing behind the scenes. So we can manually create our own session store, which is just going to track state information. And we can associate the phone number contacting us with a state for that specific user and any optional information about what they're doing or where they are in the process. For the most part, though, it's good to keep in mind that the easiest way to create a messaging bot would be to have a stateless messaging bot, because then you don't have this stuff to track. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here. We're going to come back to this stuff. So if we go down to sign up, we see that we are getting a this is the only place in this application that that the user's information is not coming to us via the webhook. So in this case, they're submitting a phone number to us, and that's from this input right here. And then we are going to first acknowledge that they've sent us something. So we'll text them back on WhatsApp. We'll ask them for a username, and at the same time, if that message was sent successfully, we're going to insert into the state database their phone number and a state. The state is going to be get username, meaning that currently we're waiting on a username from them. And so when they come back in there, and I'm going to go through the routing in a second, but the next time that they send information to our bot, they're going to be dropped into set username here with the phone and the phone number that they contacted us and the username that they responded with. And so if you got this this message here, you would type in, like, for instance, if I got this message, I would type in my username, which would probably, well, here, let's go through it. So here's my phone number. And that is going to send me a message on WhatsApp. Oh, it's not, because I haven't green-lighted myself. Okay, well, this is all going to be theoretical at this point, but I've run through it before. So it would send me a message on WhatsApp, and this would be the message. I would send it back Garann. And so then when I came down here, it would get my phone number and it would get the text Garann. And so then I'm going to insert into the user's database that phone number and that username. And that's created a new row in the user's database for that phone number, which is acting in this instance as the primary key for the user. Then I'm going to say, okay, next step. Nice to meet you, Garann. What's your email address? And again, I'm going to update the state to say that now I am, from this phone number, I'm looking for an email address. So if I'm me, Garann, I'm going to respond to this message with my email address, and that's going to come in here. So I'm going to get this. I'm going to end up at this set email function with my phone number, my email address, and is new is going to be set to true because I'm creating a new user versus changing an existing user. And so I'm going to update that users row, set my email, and then I'm going to provide another message. And because this is a new user, I want to keep walking them through the process. So I'm going to say, well, okay, we've got your email addresses, garann.means@vonage.com. If you need to update it, text such and such to back to us. Finally, what's your mailing address? And again, we're going to come down here, update the state to get address. When we set the address, we're going to get the address. We're going to save it in the users table. We'll send back a nice message. That's it. You're all set. So we're going to come down and update the state to waiting, meaning that we've completed this process. And so that's how we walk through this fake stateful signup process for a user when we have no actual way of tracking state automatically. So before we move on, any questions about any of that? It's kind of theoretical. We'll go and talk about the way that all gets routed now. But does anybody have any questions about the theory of storing state and creating that manually? Okay, great. And then you should be able to just get up and running pretty quickly by remixing the glitch project. So if that works for you, then that should be a quick way to get going. Okay, let's go forward. So the interactions. Rather than multi-step processes, we're going to differentiate different pieces of info in the same message where we can, because it's less to track. Basically, if we don't have to track the state, we don't want to. Again, with a bot of any kind, a messaging bot of any kind, it's easier if you just don't have to track the state. And we can use really simple tools like string manipulation and regular expressions to parse the commands that we're sent. But it's important to keep the tasks that we allow lightweight so that there's very minimal lost work if a mistake is made, because when somebody's typing all of this in on their phone with their thumbs, they have to use special characters to differentiate pieces of data. There's a potential for errors, and so we want to be aware of that and make sure that we're not asking them to type, War and Peace into WhatsApp and then say, "Oops, there's an error. You have to do it all over again." Part of being the web server is that we have to do all this work. So when we get a text message, that's the request. Parsing it is going to tell us what type of request it was, what resource it's requesting, and what it wants us to do with it. And then its contents are going to tell us what to do with that resource. But the message that we're receiving can also be a response, because like we just saw with the user sign up process, it can be something that is just giving us feedback that we've requested and doing nothing else. And then we're responsible as the web server for moving on to the next step and knowing what to do after that. So let's take a look now at our incoming message handlers, because these are, this is a lot of switch statements. So the first place that we're going to come is this inbound handler, which is where the webhooks come. And so all of the information that we're getting from Vonage via WhatsApp, from WhatsApp via Vonage, is going to come right in here in this request object. This request body contains a bunch of information, some of it more specific to telephony, and some of it more human readable and easy for us to work with. So an important thing that we want to get is the from number. Of course, we want to know who's texting us, and we want to know for sure. So from here on out, if we interact with our user, it's going to be from a number that we know, and so we're going to use that number as a key, and we can rely on it pretty much we can rely on it unless it changes at some point, which is something we'll talk about later. And then we want to get the message that they've sent us, which is going to be request body message.content. And you can examine those, try sending various messages to your bot if you're already at the point where you're registered with it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to look in the state database to see if we're already in the middle of some kind of interaction with this phone number, and if we need to keep walking them through some process. And so there are various states we can get. If it's get username, we'll send them to that get username, set username function we looked at, get email, set email, get address, set address. There's also confirm payment. We'll talk about that later. We can send that to complete by. Otherwise, if there's no state, or the state is waiting, I should say, which will be the default, then we want to move the message on to parse incoming. So we're going to send the same information, which is from that number and message.content. That's going to come into parse incoming, and then we're going to begin parsing it. So we're going to first get the text of the message, which will be either in message.text for a text message, or message.image.caption if it's an image message, or if it's just an image basically with a caption. Then we want to grab the first letter of that, because in designing this, I tried to make it as simple on myself as possible. So all of the potential commands that someone can send us have start with a different letter to make it easy. So we don't have to do as much string matching. So we're just going to look at the first letter. We're going to make sure everything's lowercase so that we don't run into silly errors because WhatsApp capitalizes everything that you start with. And then we want to get the words within the message that's been sent to us by splitting on the spaces. We're going to go through and look at the first letter, and what we're going to do will depend on, of course, what letter we've been set, but also what information we will send on to the function will depend on what situation we're in. So for a lot of these, we're just going to assume that, like, say for example, set email. Somebody wants to change their email address, they just say email you@domain.com. And so all we really need to look at is two words here. So we've already got the first word, email, which is the command, and then the second word is going to be their actual email address that we're going to send on to the function to update their email address. But in certain cases, a mailing address, for instance, we don't know how long that's going to be, so we'll just pop off the command address and send the rest of the message as a string. And then a listing is going to be really long, and it's going to contain an image, so we do something completely different there. And that is pretty much how we are being the server. It looks really unsophisticated, but I think it's a compromise between being able to read this stuff and work with it, and trying to be a little bit more low level about it. So, do we have any questions? Looks like we only have questions about setup and things like that. Does anybody have any questions about how the messages come into the server, or what they contain, the payload that they contain, or anything like that at this point? Okay. So it's important that if we're going to send notifications, that we offer people the ability to explicitly opt in and opt out. And this is a completely valid thing for a bot to do. A bot you usually think of it, answering your questions like, how can I set my billing address or whatever. But a bot also sends notifications. Many of us might have like Slack channels that show notifications, for instance, via bots. And it's important that opting out of those kind of notifications is easy, because in a lot of cases, like, you may not realize how many notifications you're going to be getting, or it may sound cool and then it becomes annoying. Anytime you're talking about somebody's personal device that you're going to be sending notifications to that they're not explicitly requesting, you want to make sure that opting out is really easy for them. And so we are going to talk about this in the context of hashtag functions within our example code here. So if we come down, okay, let's post some music. Okay. Come down here to the subscribe function here. This will allow somebody to say, I can send a message that says subscribe hashtag Nike, for instance, and this is going to parse all that out. So I'm going to get that information, and then I'm going to, again, do some string manipulation here. So I'm going to make sure that my tag is normalized to some extent by making it all lowercase, taking the hashtag out of it. So it's just, at this point, it's just a term, and it goes in, and then it goes in with the subscriber. Clearly, it would be good at this point to check if the tag exists and maybe do some other kinds of error checking, maybe look for spelling errors or things like that. And ideally, we would have one big database of tags that would, have all the potential spellings and whatever. But we're doing this very simply. So so this is all it is, and that's all it really has to be. It doesn't need to be a normalized piece of data with its own primary key to function as a tag. So now, anytime somebody uses that specific wording to tag an item, I'm going to get a notification. Got it. We'll send you new listings tagged Nike to unsubscribe, text unsubscribe Nike. And so right here, as soon as somebody is subscribed to this notification, we want to let them know how they can unsubscribe from it. And the unsubscribe function is just the reverse of what we just did. It's just deleting that row from the subscriptions table, and it's as easy as that. And that is probably ideal. And just to have a little peek at what's going to happen with those subscriptions. When somebody creates a listing, this notify subscribers function is going to be called with all the information for the listing. And we're going to create this listing object to send to, getting it ready to send to WhatsApp. And all of this is basically just a template for the message that we're going to be sending. We could use a WhatsApp template potentially. I don't know if they have one that is exactly like this. But and then we want to get the hashtags that the listing contains. So we're going to use a regular expression to do that, just grabbing anything within a hashtag within the text that we were sent. And then for every one of the tags that we were able to match against, we want to do a select from the subscriptions table. And then for every subscription to every hashtag, we're going to send out a message saying, here's this new listing. It says, does this give the text? No, sorry, it doesn't give the text. But it's just gonna, it's gonna say this user is selling this item for this price, and then it's gonna attach an image to that showing the pair of shoes. And so there you go. There you have it. That is our very simple subscription, and that is what the result of the subscription is going to be. More complex commands can be useful. Again, this gets into a philosophical area, I think, where like you might not want to do this with a bot. On the other hand, it might be really useful for people to be able to just do this by firing off a text message. You have to really look at your specific scenario and whether it will serve your users to have to learn the syntax or not. But I think that it's very useful to remember that Twitter, which did this really well and is probably successful because of it, like people picked up Twitter really quickly, even though Twitter asked you to use this specific grammar to construct complex commands that you couldn't edit, and it can work. It can be a thing that works. I'll just say that. So the important thing is that you have to have some kind of way to differentiate the pieces of data. If you're not just taking one piece of data, if you're giving a command, giving some 2 or 3 different types of pieces of data along with it, then you have to have a way to differentiate that. So you can use space or comma delimited positional arguments. So if it's something that can be said in one word or within a space of like it doesn't need punctuation, you can say it needs to have commas or slashes or something like that, dividing it up. And so you can just say, here's a series of arguments, the same way you would give arguments to a function after that follow the command name. Or you can do what Twitter does. You can use special characters, and that's what this example code is doing too. It's using hashtags. It's using $signs for prices, and it's breaking out special pieces of the text data that come in that way. You can also use ordered keywords. Like you could construct like a specific grammar the same way like SQL works or something like that. If you wanted to, that might be kind of intense for your users. But if it makes sense in your scenario, it makes sense in your scenario. You know your users best, and so you know what is going to be the easiest thing for them to do. Which again, to stress this, maybe not to have complex commands at all, but that's every scenario is different. But if you're getting away from natural language, the important thing, I think, in whatever approach you choose, is to make the default response be the help text that guides people into what syntax and what grammar they're supposed to be using. Editing capabilities are a little bit tricky, I think, with these things, because anytime you have like a confirmation of something that you want to happen, or the ability to say what you want to edit and then edit it, like you're talking again about steps, you're talking about a stateful process that you need to go through, and where possible, it's easier to avoid that. So you probably want to be able to edit things independently, and that's why this code makes the choice to allow people to change their email address and their mailing address independently after they've submitted them, because there's with the email address, it's going to be very problematic if somebody's submitted the wrong one. With the mailing address, there's a likelihood that changes. It's complex information. It's not complex information, but it's a lengthy piece of data. So there's more potential for typos there. So those are things that really need to be edited. Whereas if you look at the code, the listing itself can't be edited. If you mess up your listing, like a tweet on Twitter, you just have to delete it and redo it. And deleting and replacing is a lot more certain and a lot more less prone to failure than editing those pieces of complex data. If you've taken something as a big piece of complex data, you probably don't want to allow it to be edited unless you're willing to commit to walking through a very lengthy stateful process. So let's have a look at the help and the listings now and see what we're actually talking about here. So back up here, just roll past it and minimize it. Here's the help. So this is the help message, and this is what happens when there's an error with the data that was sent. So if you send an unrecognized command to this this bot, then that's what it's going to say. Also you get this when you first sign up, and you can of course explicitly request it too by saying help. And then this gives you a rundown of various things that you can do, and it's all pretty simple stuff. For the most part, it's it's a one-word command and some kind of data that goes along with it. And that's to keep it pretty simple. The big deviation from that is right here, where you list an item. So when you list an item for sale, you've got the list command, you've got a title here, you've got hashtags, you've got a photo that comes along with it, and then you've at a price. And that's going to create that new listing with all this information here. So that's a heavy piece of data, and it's going to require more string manipulation, as you can see. So as soon as we get into the list function here, we're going to start taking this string apart. So we've got this this text that came in. We want to first split out the price. So we're going to split it on the $, and then we're going to say that whatever is before that $, is part of the description. The price is going to be the second part of that. If there's a space in the price, then we're going to say, the description actually continues. Put the rest of that text back onto the description, and then we're going to deal with the hashtags separately from there. But this the hashtags actually get stored, excuse me, for simplicity's sake, in the text, in the listing in the database, just to keep things a little bit simpler. But this big piece of data basically gets parsed as best we're able to, and stored as separate fields within the database, and then we notify people about it. And at least as important as creating the listing is being able to delete it. So then we can come along here and just given the ID, and we receive the ID explicitly as soon as we created the listing, so we have access to that. So we can delete this. And you notice that this should be checking that not only does the ID match, but the phone number matches, so you don't delete other people's listings. But that is one of the many ways that this example code could be improved. So we're going to then just set it to, we're just going to set it to be inactive. And this is when you're talking about something where, like for instance, I've used this extremely naive method of just looking at the first letter of a command. So somebody could accidentally delete something that would be difficult, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that somebody would accidentally delete something. So we're just making something inactive, so that if there was something higher stakes than just having entered the text going on, they could possibly get back somehow. And so that is the complex data in this example. Let's pause again. Alex, I think that, yeah, thinking about these as a state machine is absolutely the correct way, because because that's what you're building. Unless you're doing some kind of like natural language processing maybe, and you're able to make things a little bit more freeform, or maybe just like, let's say there's no state, like maybe your bot is only to look up some kind of information, perhaps. But even then, I mean, even if your state is only like that first message that's coming in, like you still have a state machine. It's just a flat state machine. Yeah, I see that. I'm reading the questions and answering them instantaneously before I realized that Amanda's already gotten to it. Sorry. As far as slowing down, we are actually almost at the end of walking through the code, and of the time that we have allotted to walk through the code. So I'm just gonna try and move through the rest of this really quickly, and then we're basically going to have as much time as you want to ask questions about the code, continue walking through it. We can even like theorize about some of the next steps if you want. So let's just wrap up here real quick. Finally, I want to talk really quickly about sensitive information. WhatsApp is certainly more secure than SMS. Most things are, but it's not ideal for sending sensitive data. I mean, I think everybody's aware of the association between Facebook and WhatsApp, and anything like that that is monetized. You don't generally want to expose any of your users' sensitive data to if you can avoid it. So third-party payment processing is a really good solution in a case like this. You just want to be able to like generate links, send them off to a link, have them do their payment processing in a place that is secure, that you know their data won't be used in a way they wouldn't want it to, and have them come back to say that they've done that. If it's not payment processing, if it's just other types of sensitive data like health information or something like that, you should probably provide your own secure web app that collects specifically what you need and then can put that somewhere where it's encrypted and it's safe. And once either of those processes, any process like that is completed, you can just ask for a confirmation code back that comes in lieu of sensitive information, and you can do whatever kind of verification you need to of the confirmation code without actually ever handling the sensitive information itself. And so that's shown in these by functions. Straight down toward the bottom here. So you'll see that when it comes time to buy something, I've completely made this up. Vonage does have payment processing, but in this case, just to be quick, we're not using it. We're just making this fake URL that has an ID, the ID of the listing that is going to be purchased, and the price. And so we're going to say, if you want to buy listing number such and such, that's great. Go and pay at this link, and then text us back your confirmation code. And so now we're using the state table again to set the state to be confirmed payment. So now we know that the next thing that comes in from this user should be a confirmation code to complete their purchase. So that when that comes in, we're going to get the code along with their phone number, and we're going to check in the state. I don't know why we're doing this. Sorry, I've completely forgotten why we're doing this here. Huh? Oh, because we need the of course we need there's one more field in the state table that we haven't talked about at this point, which is which would probably come up a lot more. Here in the state table, we also have this memo table, this memo field, and so that's where we can put things like an order number or something like that. So we're going to insert into orders now all of this information, including what's in the memo field of this state, which is going to be the listing ID. And we're going to put this confirmation code in here. Then we're going to update the listings. We're going to make this listing inactive so nobody else can buy it. And we're going to go ahead and notify the seller. And of course, we'll confirm to the user as well via message that their purchase has been completed. Notifying the seller will just be grabbing the information from the listings table again and saying that, hey, somebody bought this. Here's their email address, so you can work out the details, or here's their mailing address, and then here's their email address. And so that's pretty simple. We are still sending email addresses to random people, but for the most part, we keep the sensitive data sensitive, and it doesn't get shared around. So there are a lot of next steps you could take with this. I'm just going to run through this really quickly because we're almost out of time for this portion. Error handling, of course, is the big one. The reason there isn't more error handling in here is just because I didn't want to get sidetracked in this, because I wanted to focus on talking about the actual mechanism of the bot. But error handling is hugely important, and how you do it is going to make a big difference in people's customer service. But how you do it is also going to be very specific to what kind of bot you have. You want to be able to validate user information where possible. So if you're getting email addresses, you should make sure that they look like email addresses, things like that. You want to be able to handle race conditions, so if two people are going to buy the same item at the same time, which could definitely happen, because let's say somebody gets a message while they're while they're out running or something like that, saying these shoes were listed. They don't stop and buy them at that point. Somebody else gets the same message and they act on it immediately. The last thing that the person who was out running saw was that this is available. And so they're not going to get any update saying it's no longer available because it's information that's been pushed to them. So they could try to buy it and they'll have to be notified somehow that it's no longer available. And by the same token, we don't want to allow duplicates. So we don't want the same username. We don't want the same email address. We don't want the same order or 2 orders for the same item, etc. But the most important thing is that we need to tell the user how to get past these errors. We need to tell them, do they need to enter the data again? On our side, we need to say, do we remain in the same point in terms of the state of the application, or do we exit them out of the process at that point? How important is it that they complete this process? Should this block them, or should they be allowed to continue? And so these are choices that the application needs to make, and ultimately needs to think about how to message to the user without putting extra work onto them. Because if, again, with a bot, you probably almost never want to ask for a confirmation of something before you do it. You just want to say, okay, I believe that this is the correct thing and I'm going to go ahead and do it. And if there are situations where it's a very high stakes thing that you're doing the first time, one, maybe consider not doing it via a bot, but 2, if you do need to do it via a bot, do validation and checking, and ask them to fix the information if it looks sketchy. We didn't talk at all about WhatsApp templates, but you would need to use those to send notifications in a real world scenario. So you have 24 hours after the user messages you in which you can send them freeform WhatsApp messages, but after that you can only send them templates. And these they may not fit every scenario, and so that may change what info you want to allow people to subscribe to or what you want them to get on demand. But you can get more information about this in the Facebook docs. This is a long URL. You can look on Vonage's docs, and we have a link to this as well. And finally, natural language processing is something that obviously goes hand in hand with bots. It would be great to be able to look at the full context of what people were saying, let them speak in a natural way, be able to say things like, "What can I help you with?" And capture synonyms. Look at the full text of commands rather than the goofy just looking at the first letter thing, and being able to parse their entire text and try to determine their intent. That would obviously be a really great addition to almost any bot that you could write.